it's really tough for them or to find any work. It's just a race to the bottom in terms of price, right? And this is not what we want. We don't want to compete with the cheapest workforce in the world. We want to raise the bar.
This is the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we meet and talk about real life pricing experience. I'm your host, Filip Fucic. Hello and welcome back to the Fearless Pricing Podcast. Today we have Anastasiia Dehtiarova, a marketer and a creator with a story that will probably ring through to most of you because it's so common. Hi.
Hi,
Tell us something about yourself first.
I am a Ukrainian who has been living abroad for almost 10 years now. And through this period, I just realized that I have something good to show to the world. I have been creating content on many different topics throughout, well, it's like 3 years now, tried a lot of things. Finally stumbled upon immigration. And this is where it seems that people really feel what I'm talking about. They really see themselves in those experiences that I share.
Tell us what a should have charged stories.
Okay, so a couple of years back, it was actually when we met. It was working on a few projects at the same time as a freelancer. So I had one big project in a company in Belgium. Then I had one again in Belgium, but kind of more international. We met. It was the freelance business community. And there were a few things that I was also working on my own. So always really busy. And then from one of these clients, that big company, it was a publishing house in Belgium, another project, like in a different department, contacted me, still the same manager, but completely different thing in my marketing domain. And they told me that I would help them occasionally for a brief period of time. I used to do this kind of work for them as well, already occasionally when people were on holidays or something. So then they told, okay, the person is leaving and we need someone to help us while we're looking for a new person. It would take a month or two maximum. So how much could it be? I remember that I attended your session at Freelance Business Community in August when you were talking about charging more and raising the prices. It was like, okay, I can do more. I think it was like 20% or something. It was really good. I felt quite good about it. I was thinking, yeah, money is good. And as a freelancer, you really need to think about these things. And I just oftentimes you just grab these opportunities and then you say, I will figure it out later. I also had two more projects starting around the same time. So I already got another freelancer to help me with, some smaller tasks and things that I really was not even interested in doing. And then I thought I could hire maybe again, like as a freelancer, a graphic designer or someone to just support me with some of these, things that I don't really need to be part of. I had a personal assistant. So I was like really equipped and felt quite confident. But the thing is that this project turned out to be much more stressful than I thought. And that stress happened, I think it was not foreseen even by the client that much. It was closing to the end of the year. It was in marketing and ads. So it was a lot of stress and ads started under delivering and I had to figure out the ways to deliver those, clicks and impressions and everything to big names like BMW and like whatnot. So that was really stressful, turned out to be kind of full time on top of everything that I have been already doing. Even with the help, it was just too much. I would sit in front of my computer all the time like this, and I would literally started feeling pains, like random pains in my body because I was not moving. I was just in front of my computer, just stress all the time. And that project dragged for 6 months in total. And as I was really upset. I would even tell them very much in their face when we had like alliance and different calls, like, hey guys, I'm really stressed and it's not how it should be. And there was just a lot of these emotions that I felt really resentful. Eventually, actually, that's when I started working with you. I think it was around November or something that year, right? Because they needed to extend it. And then we talked with you. I asked you, how can I price it better because this is already horrible. But I feel like, how I am as a person, I'm very responsible. So I didn't feel like dropping that. I felt very personally involved in it at that point. And just my expertise and just being a good professional, I didn't want to drop anything, but it was also not very doable for me. And they asked me if I could work on, holidays, like winter holidays. I said no. I left for 2 weeks. It was just like, it was one of the first times when I actually said no without regretting.
I remember.
Yeah, it was just too much. And while I have made the most money I've ever made to that point with all these projects together, I don't think it was worth it. So now it's a good lesson to share. Now it's probably helpful to many people. And it helped me also that capital. I kind of used it to develop some other stuff, but I don't think it was worth it. And it taught me a big lesson of how to just, I don't know, take care of myself kind of post factum. Yeah, I think I
Hmm.
should have charged more. I should have organized myself better, maybe have to have more support or drop some projects that were not how to say they would not pay the same way in different ways as well, because some projects, like you also, Philip, say rightfully right, there are different gains that we get apart from money. Not all of the kind of income or reward that we get is money, it's something else. So there were a lot of these things that I was doing at the period that would pay me very little or nothing at all. They were more like passion projects, but they really kind of propelled me towards the professional I am right now. Yeah, I think it was just
Hmm.
probably it was a mistake to make, but yeah.
What does it mean organizing yourself better in that sense? So you said you should have organized yourself better. What do you mean? If you had the chance to redo that part of your life, I know you
Mhm,
wouldn't enter in the
mhm.
same kind of relationship, and I know you would charge more now. But what does that mean? So even if you could redo that, how would you organize it now that you didn't organize
Yeah,
before?
I don't have answer to a part of this question, something that I mentioned before, which
Hmm.
is the stress, like to foresee the stress, to foresee those kind of fires to put down. That I don't think it was possible at that point. I didn't have all the overview of like the project as I was entering to foresee some of those uh, tight deadlines or just impossibility of delivering certain results that I had then to frantically try to understand how to deliver, because it just the whole thing was not set up for that. It was something of theirs. It was like their problem, but I didn't have enough understanding of their system at that point to understand that what they were expecting was not possible. So that's one thing that I don't have the answer for in terms of like how to organize the
Hmm.
expectations from the client when you don't have a full overview of the scope in a sense, right? Because the scope, again, it's a moving target.
Oh yes.
Then, in terms of organizing myself better, probably I would have more support, or as I said, just drop some of the projects or put them on hold, or just be less a people pleaser. Try to figure, like figure out how to make everyone happy. Yeah, just said no more.
It's
Mhm.
hard because once you're a freelancer, you get no guaranteed paid months. So feast famine cycles, where you have too much work or you don't have enough, they're unpredictable and their length is unpredictable. So, of course, just like any other organism in that kind of situation, you're trying to get as much as you can while you can get it, right? You overextend yourself to have reserves for the time that you know that can come that you don't have anything. So, it's easy to say, you should not take so much. Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
but then you beat yourself up. Why didn't take this a little more? Take a little more, right? It's not easy, and
Yeah.
it's definitely not a simple decision. So yes, I think you would recognize a situation better this way. But getting to a consistent schedule, partly luck always, and even then, it's always just a question of how will it end, not will it end. Usually, no. Before we continue, I'd like to suggest two things. Firstly, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I'd love for you to subscribe and hear the next story in a week. And second, if you feel you could do with a little more fearless pricing content, look in the show notes for the link to the popular, short, and sometimes funny biweekly newsletter. That's it. Let's get back to the show. Even with employers these days, or the last 20 years, it's not the end of the story. Oh, okay. I got employed. The end.
Yeah.
I just now, I take a course and then I follow it until my pension. No, absolutely not. And even less when you're a freelancer. So it's just a question of when it ends, not when.
Yep.
And when you know that changes the perspective of this. I mean, when you have an employer, it seems like it's a more predictable course. Though, I don't know. Statistically, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Especially not in the very modern times. And especially not in the advent of a new technology that nobody knows how it will affect the workforce, but everybody understands that it will. So job security in general is a good joke. We rather choose this path, which I can see things happening a little further down the line, right? So anyway, and of course you were upset because, as far as I can understand it, it was your responsibility to deliver things which are not under your control, right? That's kind of situation is unavoidable in some industries, but it's a very, very inhuman situation to be in. Because, look, when you're digging a hole, either working and achieving results, or you're not working and not achieving. There is no in between. If you dig, you there's dirt flying out. If you don't dig, there is no. If you dug all day, you can show how deep of a hole you made. That's not a thing in marketing. You can do posts all day, you can write all day, and I mean, especially when you write, oh god, you have like 26 versions of something to get to something good, and then you can show, ta-da, these 3 sentences is what I did all day. And if somebody who is hiring you ever wrote in their life, they would understand. Usually they don't.
Yeah.
They say, okay, and what did you do all day? Especially with knowledge work. I think my last guest, Paul Ashley Jensen, would the less words you use, the more people want to pay you, you know? So if you're a beginner, then you generate a lot of words. If you really know what you're talking about, you don't have to, but then somebody says, so why am I paying you? You're just producing so little, right? And whether that has an effect on people, I mean, overall, you know some best practices, but a lot of it, a lot of it is a slot machine on social media these days. It's a slot machine,
Oh yeah, tell me
right?
about that.
Well, this is then interesting in the base of what people pay you. So why does somebody pay you? Because you press things on your keyboard? Because you sit in front of your computer? What's the basis of that? So the more you X, the more that you get right. Right. Great. What's X? And yes, usually people start with hours, but I mean, the birds on the wire know that's not the greatest thing for expert work because, like I said, with expert work, more hours doesn't necessarily mean anything. Somebody who never wrote in their life will spend 20 hours to write something way worse than somebody who wrote for 20 years. And even then, more posts is not better, and longer posts is not better. Ideal thing to do would be like maybe one post every 2 weeks and it's always viral. Nobody can do that, but the ideal marketer would do that,
Mhm.
right? If the post could be like 3 words long so everybody reads it, even better,
Mhm.
right? That's the ideal. The ideal is not somebody who posts a book's worth of posts every
Yeah.
week. That's nothing. So anyway, that's hard. Why didn't the 20% work? You were happy when you were taking
Mhm.
that deal, and you said, "Oh, good. In comparison to what I used to get, this is 20% more. That should work." Why didn't it work? What do you think?
I mean, let alone, let's say, some of the expenses that I started to have just to keep this going, right? To have these two freelancers on board, to have the assistant to just generally, I don't know, take taxis everywhere because like the cost of the taxi was much lower than the time that I would, if I worked, I would get more money than that. So that was an interesting period that I would spend a lot of money just to have more time. That's one thing. And I think just the stress itself, it was a lot. And I mean, don't get me wrong. When I say that I wasn't happy, doesn't mean that people were not understanding, but also they were under a lot of pressure, right? They promised all those, I don't know, those deliverables to the big clients and the end of the year, and it was crazy. And they had to really move around. So I was kind of a savior, honestly, there. I think they were really grateful. And even when they found the person eventually, they wanted me to stay for longer. And I just said, guys, I'm done. I'm done. I just can't.
What you were doing, the Americans, I think, call burning the kill
Mm.
fence. So it burns brighter, but it's completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
So whether it's clinically burnout or not, you definitely burned more than you actually, right? It was completely unsustainable. So that's completely understandable, as they say. What would you say is the biggest mistake that a freelancer can do when they price?
That depends, though.
Sure, it always does.
It's a great question.
From
From my
your perspective,
perspective, and I'm
like,
saying this very
yeah.
like purely just to me, even a few months back, not feeling confident that you can deliver what you're saying. That is often what I see in myself. I say yes to a lot of things, but I do it with the fear of being, discovered as an imposter, right? Like, do I actually know what I'm doing? And maybe I found the perfect profession to always challenge this because, as you said, marketing is anything but certainty. I'm even also with content, some like things that I create, videos and everything. I do it because I believe it helps. And I got a lot of amazing things thanks to my content already. But it's always like just try many things and you don't even know what's gonna stick. If anything's gonna stick, it's not a guarantee that even 1% of what you're gonna create is gonna be successful in one way or another. I don't know. I think it's yeah, cultivating the confidence in you as an expert. That is one big thing that probably can resolve a big chunk of those doubts that you also talk a lot about, right? Just understanding better the offer. So then you can use all those different methods and techniques of explaining the value or just showing the value to the customers. To me, how I'm built and I'm working a lot on that is to believe that I'm good enough.
Yes. And what we talked about, I remember that what we talked about was compared to
Hmm.
whom,
Exactly.
right? So when I was working in an office with a proper job, then one of my bosses, the finance one, we talked, and he said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Yeah, and I have to work on that. I'm the only one that can deliver this." And he said, "Well, I went to the same school as you 20 years prior. Of course, I said, yes. Do you have the time to do that?
Mm.
Well, no. Then it's a moot point.
Yeah.
So, yes, maybe there's also somebody else that can technically do that. But if they don't have the time to do it and they don't have the resources to do it, then effectively I'm the only one. So,
Mhm.
can we talk about some actionable
Yeah.
stuff? If we're talking about theoretical stuff, sure, why not? But I don't see the point in that, right? So, you don't have to be it's like in that joke. I don't have to be run quicker than faster than the bear. I just have to run faster than the guy, right? So whether you are an imposter, um well, I mean, you're not, but also nobody knows what. I distinctly remember when we started working
No, if it was
together.
2 years ago, then I was 28.
So
Yeah.
28. You were 28. And you said, "Ugh, I wish I knew this at 25." I didn't know this stuff at 25. I wish I did,
Mhm.
And today I'm totally a professional on this, but I have had yet to make most of my mistakes when I was 25. So, you know, nobody knows what they're doing. That's fine. And I mean nobody. I mean,
Yeah, I
and on the nature of work in marketing. There's this framework developed by David J. Snowden
Mhm.
in the turn of the millennium, which shows the different environments in which you can work and you can learn and you can follow the rules. And in a complicated, let's call it a normal situation, there are rules. And if you do this, then that happens. If you do this much, then that happens. So that's maybe something really straightforward like chemistry or physics. There's always fringe of
Mhm.
happening or road engineering, you know?
Mhm.
If the angle is more than this, then that's bad, right? And there you can the sensible thing to do is first to gather information, so sense, then analyze and then respond. And that's what we're taught to do. That's what schools teach us to do.
Right.
And that's how you approach tests. Things are right or wrong, right? This
Mhm.
answer. So question is, should you respond with an authoritative speech when challenged by this or that? So there's a test, you're writing it, and the answer is yes, or the answer is no, or the answer is yes in situation A, B, and C, and not in D. And that's correct or incorrect, right?
Yeah.
You can do that in a complicated system. In a complex system, um, there's like couples of constraints and couples of rules that independently work off each other, like in psychology
Mhm.
or something, or cooking, I think. There's definitely some things that we know and some things that we definitely don't. And the thing to do is different. There, it makes sense to first to probe, first to try out what's happening, sense out what does that really mean, where does this
Mhm.
belong, and then to respond. So there's no gathering of information and analysis like the thing you probed won't change. That's not a good idea because the system isn't stable at all. And then I think what you're talking is like in marketing, things are chaotic. That's a completely different frame. So you can do this today and tomorrow and in 3 days and in 30 days and in 31st day something completely different
Yeah.
happens and then it stops happening, or it happens 13 days in a row and then it stops happening forever. And you basically have no idea,
Mhm.
right? You know what's best practice, you know what's probably not a good idea, but you don't know how to get from A to B consistently in every situation. It's absolutely not a
Yeah.
thing, right? And there, it makes sense to first do something, not just probe, because things are changing. So you have to do
Mm.
something, you have to act, and then to sense what is. So I did something. What happened now? What? How do I respond to this? Analysis doesn't do anything. Not really,
Mm.
right? You can look at post festum, you can see, okay, so last year, 40% of our posts were memes and we were happy with so this year we can do 45% and we will be even more. No, who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe, you know, wars spring up and people stop finding something, or something start to be funny,
Yeah.
or people need more of it, or people need less of it, or God only knows, right? So anyway, Snowden's Kneffen framework is liberating once you understand that your inability to produce results from A to B doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have any idea what you're doing. And, you know, maybe you don't know everything because there's nothing to know, things are changing, but also compared to whom?
Really.
If you're not going to do this, who exactly are they going to get to do your job? Who is likely going to do that? And how is their grasp of the situation? And this is where you can see. I was talking to an engineer in a so I was talking to an engineer recently, and he's employed. And he said once, after a couple of years, I asked him to pay me more. And I was really surprised how high their offer was. And I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, I was basically the only one that could do what the company could do. So they were in deep trouble if I left. And he says, I don't think they realized that. I said, oh, I think they did. Because that's why you were surprised how high that somebody realized, no, that this guy should not want to leave, right? So I think it crossed their mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, even if you don't know exactly who would take your place, your employers do. So people have vastly more. Once you prove yourself, once they know, they would rather not switch you with somebody else. People usually have vastly more negotiation power than they think. And that's kind of the basis of what I do, as you know. Right. What would you advise people? So, what advice can you give to people who are reluctant to raise their prices or take control or their pricing in general? I'm talking about freelancers, solopreneurs.
Okay, so you can approach it in two different ways. If you are a good girl or a good boy, right, you feel that you have all this responsibility, you need to deliver the results, you can think about it again as this responsibility perspective. You owe it to your client, right? Because they need to respect you and understand just how much of a great work you're doing. You owe it to the market as well. You owe it to your colleagues because everyone is in trouble right now. Everyone is having challenges, raising the price, inflation, whatever. Everyone is like a bit like, I don't know, running around. That's what I see. A lot of work, people just throw themselves at something that is just partially resembles what they do, just because it's really tough for them or to find any work. And then it just a race to the bottom in terms of price, right? And this is not what we want. We don't want to compete with the cheapest workforce in the world. We want to raise the bar. And it's like a really important thing. And this is where like maybe me being from country which no one really cared about apart from the last 2 years. And now things have changed. There are many of us like that, many people of us, highly skilled, qualified professionals that live in unfortunately not as popular or really interesting countries. And they suffer because of that, right? They suffer, they're seen as cheap workforce. So you as a good boy or girl, you owe it to them as well, right? Just raising the level for everyone. And then if you are, I don't know, if you are just a professional, you don't have this any kind of complex like that, you just want to do a good job, then it's for you. You owe it to yourself because you can do good work. You deserve to do all the amazing things you want to do. You deserve to build the life that you want. And this could be just a way to get there. Whether you are employed or freelancer, everyone can ask a bit more, I think. As long as it's not arrogant, but I doubt that the majority
Yeah.
of people that would be listening and watching this come from that.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think so as well. Great. Well, where can people find you?
I publish most of my content on LinkedIn, and I will ask Philip to post my my link because you will never find me otherwise if I just pronounce my name. It's a long and complicated Slavic name. But yeah, so I publish a lot of content on LinkedIn, and I have a podcast in video on YouTube and on Spotify as well. And just, yeah, drop me a DM if you want to chat. And if you are an immigrant and you want to share your lessons learned, and just plug in myself in, share with me something and let's talk.
Thank you. I'll link to all of those things and your book
Oh, yeah.
in the show notes. And thank you for sharing this with us. I think, like I said at the beginning, this is something that is so common. So all of the troubles with scope and being giddy at the idea of getting anything more and then getting in over your head. And this show is about learning through failing and not knowing what you're doing because nobody taught you, and then persevering despite of that, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you.
And to you, dear listener, see you next week. Thanks for listening. If you would like more, hit the subscribe. Until next time, your host, Philip.
And now I also have my own podcast that I'm slowly developing that is about lessons learned in immigration. We'll see where that brings me.
What? So how many episodes are you in?
Wait, I think 12 or 13. I've recorded the last one last week, and I have another one this week. I think it's 12 or 13 yet.
And what do you talk about?
We talk about different things that we learn on the journey of immigration that we're all on. And many people, I mean, we're all on, all of us immigrants. I mean, we have learned a lot of things about ourselves, about lives, about careers, about building a business, about exploring the world, emancipation, difficult emotions, and all of this are the lessons that I want to share with the audience. Not only my story, but many other stories, because in the end, all these stories are very similar to each other in one way or another. Maybe I am not from the same country as you are, and I didn't have all those experiences, but certain feelings or emotions, or just like one kind of little thing that I can relate to, you have as well. Somehow, for example, the story of this immigration office lady, it doesn't have to be a lady that was there, but this certain kind of stereotype of an immigration office lady is prevalent towards everyone. And it's just very funny because you can really remember how you were trying to get some stuff done, some papers done, and people didn't accept you that well, or instead they did. And then it's like a nice story that you can share. I've lived in 3 countries now, apart from Ukraine. So I have really different stories. And it's very funny just to share them with people and hear back from them like, oh my God, this happened the same way to me, or the way you said it really resonated so much with how it was for me. And I'm not alone.
You all met that
Yeah, we all
lady.
met that lady.